in terms of the future, we are always, according to Heidegger, ahead of ourselves. Have you ever, and this is, I think, another profound part about the narrative of the self. In a certain way, what our plans and projects are not a part of our future, but a part of our present. We're always ahead of ourselves. And we always, it's like, well, you know, lunch later, let's see, what do we want? Big Mac, bouillabaisse, it depends on your class, I guess, more than anything else. And like that, and even in terms of like college, what are my kids going to do for college? What about my retirement? This is a characteristic, and again, what I'm telling you here from Heidegger, remember, we just started with a story about the self, and now we're just telling one, and it's supposed to capture sort of the general features of selfhood, being a self. And so that's what he sees there in that structure. Dasein reveals itself in terms of the past as being thrown into a world, in terms of the present as being able to try to articulate our place within it, and in terms of the future, in terms of projecting ourselves forward, and so on. Now, here's the bad part. Heidegger realizes that you can't just simply abandon this old philosophical project and then just tell this story and hope to capture its universal features. In other words, the features that are shared by Dasein wherever we happen to bump into Dasein or to the self or selves, being there type creatures like us that asks these questions about being, without looking into what he calls moods. It's very interesting. Heidegger is one of the few philosophers to discuss something that's very important to people. Moods. I mean, most analytic philosophers have no interest in moods. It's funny. I mean, I think this is why when you read these continental philosophers, like some that I'm discussing today, they're considered a bit effeminate because this mood talk is not really macho, you know? Like, I'm in a bad mood, I have a headache, or mood talk is sort of unsettling to men. Continental philosophy appears, even in the discourse of the profession of philosophy, as being soft and so on. There's all these nouns that, you know, give it a certain characteristic. But in any case, it's clear to me that that mood is an important characteristic when you discuss the self, what selfhood is. So and this is, I think, one of the most profound parts of the analysis that the young Heidegger gives. The mood that he thinks that reveals what Dasein really is, and if this will connect with my first lecture about the masters of suspicion, is anxiety. That is the mood that will reveal, as it were, the formal existential character of Dasein, is anxiety. Anxiety. Now, when I say mood here, you could easily misunderstand me. All the account Heidegger is giving, while it's a story about the human self, this account of the mood of anxiety I'm about to give you briefly is not the kind of anxiety for which you run to the doctor or the psychiatrist and you take a Valium or talk it out or get on a damn 12-step program, because it is an anxiety before the fear of nothingness. It's an anxiety in the face of death. Don't want to make it sound, you know, too scary, but I've already said it is a democratic institution. It is something you need to deal with. And again, we're looking for universal structures. One of the structures of all stories about the selves, even the ones we tell ourselves, no matter how disconnected they may be, they end in this rather interesting institution, death. Very interesting institution. Well, he examines the mood of anxiety then, not as a mere mood that just comes upon you once in a while, but as an underlying structure of what it means to be human. In other words, if you remove this anxiety, you would also remove the self. The same view Kierkegaard holds of despair. I mean, we're not depressing people here. We're not trying to depress people, but these are structures of the selves. These aren't symptoms that Phil Donahue or Oprah Winfrey can fix. To be asked to be cured of your fundamental despair, your anxiety, is to ask to be cured of what little self you may have. It is a stupid thing to even want, in a way, because it is our anxiety that makes us look at how we came up from the past. The way that that's described by Heidegger is that we were abandoned to the they, to das Man, the crowd. What does he mean by that? Well, he means we grew up in a place like West Texas or Cleveland, Ohio, or Bangladesh, where the way we grew up and the way our past is structured, we didn't learn our moral theories from Kant or Mill. We learned them because our mamas spanked our butts, said, don't steal, whap. You know, we were thrown into that. We were abandoned to those values, as it were. It's not a scary thing. That's how we learn. See, this is a way to try to redirect our attention to the concreteness of being a self, as opposed to giving a philosophical account. This was Heidegger's attempt. You're abandoned to the they. And the reason I like that phrase, the they, is you're all familiar with remarks like, well, they say, or they say. Well, that's exactly the spirit in which Heidegger's using the concept here. You know, if you violate certain restrictions of your culture, somebody's going to go, well, but you know, they say that. Well, that's the way in which Heidegger sees us relating to our past. Anxiety reveals that to us. Now, why is it anxiety? Well, if we want to make our lives a project, and Heidegger thinks fundamentally we do, thinks that's part of the structure of Das Sein, is to want to make your story a story. A story. Not just a bunch of disconnected junk and debris that happened to happen to you, but a story, a project. If that's true, then our relation to the past is filled with anxiety because we all started from this moment of, or from this time of abandonment to the values of others, to they. It's not an evil thing. This just means the culture around you, means the opinion of people. Well, you know, they say that you know, you're wearing your hair like that, it's just, and so on. I mean, it's not unusual stuff. This is the common way in which we're brought up. Anxiety reveals our present state, and Heidegger doesn't like to talk about this, as either it's a fleeing away from. Now, this is where Heidegger brings in the way in which that we try to fill our life up with busyness to flee away from. And I admit that I don't think this can be universalized as an account. Let me admit that right now. I just think it is uninteresting. It is an interesting account, not the account. There is no such thing as the account. That's one of the underlying themes of this course. But this is an interesting one. Well, what are we fleeing away from or falling away from? Well, Heidegger thinks that, and I mean, this is sort of, again, these have all become general cultural possessions of people. Heidegger thinks until we face nothingness, our own nothingness, that we tend to fill our lives with busyness. We flee into this and flee into that. We fall away from our own best insights about what we should be doing, and so on.